Let me start this video off. This is a video that I've been meaning to make for a very long time, and I never thought I would because I was always nervous to do it, and not nervous for what people might say to me, but just nervous to finally get all of my thoughts on this whole experience out. But it is the year 2025, and going into 2025, I have a motto of fuck it and a motto of execute. And execute on, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to execute on it. I'm just sick of coming up with ideas and not executing them. So this is kind of a fuck it and execute moment. But in this video, we're going to talk about my life and my journey with epilepsy. Now, let's start with what epilepsy is, okay? Now, epilepsy it's just having reoccurring seizures in short periods of time, right? And you could have a seizure. You could have an accident. You could fall, hit your head, or whatever it may be, and have one seizure and you're not epileptic. But when you have multiple seizures in short periods of time, that is considered epilepsy. And how my doctors explained it to me when I was a little kid, like, you could have one seizure, but then they'll start to monitor you, and if you have a second seizure, they'll monitor you more. And if you have a third seizure, or even a second, some doctors, in a small period of time, some even say 6 months or a year, 2 seizures in a year, that's considered epilepsy. But so now, what is a seizure? I like to explain a seizure like this. So your brain is just a circuit board, and there's a bunch of little wires and electric running through your brain. And when there is a just random cut, a shortage in that electric, or there's just a surge, that's a seizure. Your brain just stops functioning for a split second, and that's when you either drop, you go absent, you shake, you throw up, and it's just a little disturbance in your brain waves, a shink, and you go out. Now, there's different types of seizures. People have drop seizures where they're just walking with no warning. They drop, have a seizure, shaking violently on the ground. And this is dangerous because a lot of these people you see with dogs, because it is dangerous, because the fact that you have no warning and you just drop, and some of these people will unfortunately hit their head and pass away from it. Some people have 15 seizures a day. My type of seizure, fortunately, since I can remember and I was old enough, I was able to alert people. My mom, my sisters, whoever it may be at the time, I would tell them, hey, I don't really feel well. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel a little nauseous. And I would alert them. So they would just get me to the ground. And when I was a little kid, I remember I used to always just stare to the left. I could not look right or straight, and I'd be throwing up. But I was coherent. Once I was on medicine, I was coherent. I was able to talk, and my mom would be like, who's that? I'm like, my sister, yada, yada, you know. And then some people just have absent seizures. Absent seizures is pretty much just you're talking like this, and then you just stare off, and then come right back to the conversation. So they could literally be like, yeah, and then I was hit. And it'll go on for a minute, and then they go, and then I went to the, and like they don't even miss a beat, but they just freeze for a second. That's absent seizures. And a lot of people have that. That is undiagnosed, actually. So that being said, now that we have that established on what a seizure is and what epilepsy is, and what type of seizures I had, we're going to talk about my first ever seizure. Now, the unfortunate thing about seizures are there's no cause for them. I mean, there's certain people that have TBIs and that, and then they have seizures after that point, epilepsy, and there's an obvious cause. But there's also people like me who there is no diagnosed reason on why I had epilepsy. Um, Me and my family believe when I was born, my mom was giving birth, the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck and cut off oxygen for multiple minutes. Um, and we believe that might be a cause of the epilepsy because the lack of oxygen to the brain at that age for so long could have caused it and could have caused damage. But it is still unconfirmed. But so my first seizure is I was young. I was just under a year old, and me and my mom were at the house, and I was eating McDonald's. And all of a sudden, I turned blue and stopped breathing. Um, and so she called the paramedics and called my nana, my grandma, and my grandma came over and was hysterical, I guess, was tripping out. But the paramedics came and they weren't necessarily sure what was going on. My mom thought I was choking, but they confirmed that I was not choking. And they had no idea until a certain paramedic came up, who I still know to this day. And he took my shoes off, and he saw that my shoes were curled up. And he confirmed that, okay, this is a seizure he's having. So after he learned the duration and how long the seizure's been going on, he figured, good call by him. It's unsafe to put him in an ambulance. We need to get him to the hospital immediately because I'm just so young and it's been going on for so long, this seizure, that they called in Mercy Flight. And the ambulance took me to a field and this helicopter landed and I was put on the helicopter. And my mom and her friend came picked her up and they raced to the hospital. They actually got to the hospital before the helicopter. And I tell people that and it sounds fucking fake, but it's true. It sounds like a lie, but I think because I had to, the hospital that I went to was Children's Hospital in Buffalo, New York, and it was the old Children's, not the new Children's, where there's like a whole helipad right on it. I'm pretty sure I had to go to Mercy, and they had a helipad, and then I had to get ambulanced to Children's. But they wheel me in, and my mom sees me, and I'm just a little infant, not even a year old, and I'm blue. I look gray. I'm just like, look dead. And she faints and falls to the floor. And I was like, what the fuck? And my family's there. But they confirm it's a seizure. And if another one happens, I have epilepsy, yada, yada. And, of course, I have another one. And, now I have epilepsy. I'm diagnosed with epilepsy. So moving forward, life changed a little bit for them. And I could only imagine how hard it was for them and my sisters to see that type of thing with their brother. Yeah, so some things changed. I started sleeping with my mom because the unfortunate truth about epilepsy is it claims lives, right? It definitely kills people. And that's just the morbid truth about it. And a lot of the deaths are caused from seizure related accidents like driving or operating machines, or just having a drop seizure, hitting your head, and you're dead. But a lot of them are when kids are just sleeping and the parents are sleeping and everybody's sleeping, the kid has a seizure in his bed and dies. So I slept with my mom because she did not want me to have a seizure and die in my bed. So that caused some fucking problems. So now that my first seizure is covered, we're going to go into my childhood with epilepsy and just cover that. Yes, I do have a little cheat sheet right here that has my bullet points on how I want this to be, organized. But so childhood was a little bit different than the average kid. I remember from a young age, I'm wanting to go outside and climb a tree, and my family's hunters and that. And I'm like, my dad and uncles, they all climb trees, they hunt. So I was a little kid. I'm like, I want to climb a tree. And I used to go out and climb trees against my mom's, rules. And my mom had this rule, like, no climbing trees. I'm like young. I'm like, why can't I climb a fucking tree, man? And now looking back, I mean, that's smart. What happens if I'm in the tree and have a seizure? I fall out. I remember swimming. I couldn't swim alone. And I'm like, why can't I fucking swim alone when my mom's just right in the house? I'm like, I'm not home alone. She's right there in the house. And I couldn't swim. Checks out now. I remember being a kid going out in the woods and that and running around. And my mom would constantly yell out into the woods, TJ. And I'm like, why the fuck is she always checking in? I'm like, God damn. And I'd be like yelling back. She doesn't answer. Yelling back. She doesn't answer. So I had to like run out of the woods to talk to her. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? But that's just a young kid that doesn't realize, she's just making sure I'm not dead in the creek. But so epilepsy as a kid didn't really affect me much socially until I got into school, and I was able to make friends, and I was, not a shy kid, but there was definitely some hardships with it, and I'm not going to sit here and say I was bullied like crazy, but kids definitely made comments. I remember one time, I was 5 years old, I was on the bus headed to kindergarten, and a kid that is older than me, he's my sister's age, my eldest sister's age, told me I'm retarded, and since I have epilepsy, I'm retarded, and I will never forget, shout out Miranda, cocking up and punching this dude straight in the fucking face. That was sweet. She was like, I don't know, she was probably like in fucking 6th grade, 7th grade or something like that. Fucking blasted this dude right in the face because he called me retarded. I'm like, shout out Miranda. But so school is a little bit different for me for sure. I was in extra help classes, and I had to be in speech. Now, there was another issue that made this a little bit more difficult, and my parents split, so we were financially struggling, and so I just went to school wherever my mom taught at the time, and she taught at 2 different Catholic schools, and so it was just uncomfortable for me because, well, now I'm getting ahead of myself. Kindergarten, I also had to repeat kindergarten. But when I would go to new schools, I just constantly, I had to explain to kids, why am I a year older than you guys? And with extra help, I would like leave a class early and then show up to a class late to go with my extra help teacher. And then I would like miss a class for speech. And then I know, like, kids would ask me, why did you miss this class? Or why are you coming in late? And then I'd be like, because I have extra help. And they're like, extra help for what? And I was just real ashamed of it as a kid. It caused a lot of weird type. All the extra help was just, I would go see a teacher, and she specialized in this stuff, Mrs. Clark, shout out. And she would just, what we learned in school, she would go over with me again and made sure I understood it just one-on-one and help me out. And speech just helped me learn how to, comprehend. And I had to be in these classes because my epilepsy medicine was terrible on my cognition. I had bad memory loss and brain fog. And my reading comprehension was really bad because I would be reading and just forgetting what I'm fucking reading. So yeah, I went to those extra help classes, and I would, say I would leave art early. I would show up to Spanish late at Catholic school. You take Spanish really young. And kids would be like, why are you late? In like 5th grade, or 6th grade, I would leave and then show up to like religion late, and which I didn't mind showing up to religion late, but nonetheless, yeah. it was just uncomfortable every time I went to a new school having to explain to these kids, and it was embarrassing of why am I getting pulled out for New York State exams and just any test? Why do I get pulled out, and why do I have a teacher read it to me, and why do I get extra time? And it made me feel inadequate as shit. I didn't think this video would be this hard to make. But I'm finally like fleshing it out and you know, speaking this out and kind of just working it out in my own head and finally coming to terms with all of it, I guess, and fully working through it here. I kind of just ignore all this, but back to what I'm saying. So yeah, that caused a lot of problems for me mentally. Other kids were typically pretty nice about it. They were understanding. They didn't really care, you know. But it just made me have a little chip on my shoulder as a young kid. I was always very defensive, meeting new people that I thought they were going to make fun of me. And I kind of self-isolated. I mean, it's a joke in my family. Like, I never had friends over in that, and I had just, like, a couple really, 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 really close friends. I had either really close friends or I didn't talk to people because I was afraid that people were going to think I'm dumb and judge me for my epilepsy. And now looking back, that's dumb, obviously, to think like that because I can't help it. But when you're a young man, you can't help yourself. So my circle was always very, very, very small. I did play football and I wrestled and that, but now looking back, the extra help was necessary, obviously, but it gave me a really bad complex in my brain that I thought I'm dumb, I'll never be good at school, and I'll always need this extra help. And I used to beg my mom, please, please, please get me out of this extra help. But I needed it, obviously. Now, it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I fully understood the full spectrum of what epilepsy is and how it affects the people around me. So when I was a kid, I had to spend a lot of time in the hospital getting EEGs and getting blood work and all that. And an EEG just monitors your brain activity. But I do have a funny story from an EEG one time. Because of me having to be like so close to my mom and just kind of her always having to keep an eye on me, I developed super bad separation anxiety. Like so bad. Like if I took a nap and woke up and she wasn't in the same room, I would freak out thinking she left. I couldn't, like, if she went in the store and like my sister was way older than me, she was old enough to watch us in the car, I had to get out with my mom. I could not stay in the car. Like I had to follow her. But so I go to get this EEG one time, and I had to, every night before an EEG, I had to stay up super late with my mom because I had to sleep the next morning while I was getting the EEG for them to monitor my brain activity. And it was a new doctor for some reason that day. They spent the super long time putting EEG is all these little hundreds of wires on your head. And I fall asleep, and the guy's like, tells my mom, all right, we could step out. You can go to the waiting room. And my mom was like, no. I'm not going to the waiting room. And he's like, no, it's okay. And she's like, if he wakes up and I'm not in this room, he's going to lose it. And the doctor goes, no, he won't wake up. Sure enough, my mom goes in the waiting room. I wake up, look around. My mom's not there. Lose it. Rip all the wires out of my head. Take off down the hallway. As I'm running the hallway, the doctor's office door is open. He's sitting at his desk. He turns. He's like, what? I cut right, veer, fucking hauling ass right to the fucking lobby to my mom. And the dude had to set all the fucking wires back up, but should have fucking listened, right? But yeah, no. So a lot of time was spent in the hospital, and blood work like fucking crazy. I hated that. And EEGs and just constant checkups. So now we're gonna fast forward a little bit to March 27th, 2012. And that's when the doctor called and told my mom I'm epilepsy free. I remember that day she dropped to the floor crying. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, holy shit. And she told me, she's like, you're epilepsy free. That was a pretty emotional day. I thought that whole battle and all that was done, but it, so to say, was kind of just getting started because there's long-lasting effects of it. And a lot of these effects I never even told anybody, but we're going to air them out today. But so that was a big moment. I was epilepsy free. I still had to go to extra help classes until 7th grade. When I went to a new school, I got out of extra help classes and speech and all that. But I was off the medicine, so my brain fog was gone and memory was better and all that. So I go to middle school, I go to 7th grade, and I'm at a new school, and I thought, academically, I'm going to do better because I'm off the medicine, all this shit. I'm like, let's go. And it's been a couple years I'm off the medicine, but at that point, I had such a belief in my head that I was dumb that I did horrible in school. And that is nobody's fault but my own. And it's not because of my ability, it's because my lack of trying is why I did so bad in school. I just didn't try, didn't care. I thought I'm doomed. My belief, the paradigm in my brain was you're dumb as fuck. You're dumb. You're not going to be able to remember shit. You can't fucking remember a thing that you're reading. You're just not a school person. So just focus on football and fucking barely get by. I almost failed 7th grade, and I think I should have failed 7th grade, but I think teachers liked me, and there was a couple exams there where I needed to fucking do really, 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 really well on to pass the grade, and somehow I did well on them. And shout out a couple teachers, because I think you passed me by because you saw more potential in me. But so middle school, I started to get a little bit more comfortable with my whole epilepsy story and all that. And I was still uncomfortable to tell people I failed a grade, but I was not as embarrassed to tell people I had epilepsy. And some people say you never get rid of epilepsy, you just don't have the seizures anymore. But middle school was kind of a time that I didn't really think about epilepsy too much. I was too busy playing football and all that. But senior year is when I started to have some problems with it. Or high school is when I started to have some problems with it. But so now, fast forward to high school. I barely scraped by fucking middle school. But I still went to high school. I'm going to just try to fucking survive. Grade wise, get through, get my diploma, get the fuck out of there. But so it wasn't until I had this class, pre-biology, that I became really interested. I was like, wow, this subject is interesting to me, and something in school was catching my attention. And I think a really pivotal person in this whole journey was my teacher, my 9th grade pre-biology teacher, Mr. Schimmert. And Mr. Schimmert, we're not going to spend so much time talking about high school, but Mr. Schimmert was definitely a very needed person in my life, and he doesn't even know it, but he gave me grace and leniency on homeworks and tests and that, and he worked with me and didn't just try to bury me, and that transformed me as just a human, in the fact that I wanted to do good in his class, and I was interested in what I was learning about, and the way he was teaching me was keeping me interested. And the way he was respecting me, wanted me to show him respect. And so I did fairly well in intro to biology, and that just sparked something in my brain that maybe what I've been telling myself since I was a kid isn't true. Maybe I'm not fucking dumb. So, shout out Mr. Shimmert. So flash forward sophomore year, I get my license. That's another huge moment in my epilepsy journey, was getting my license, because my mom stressed for years that I would not be able to live a regular human life because of epilepsy. And if I had epilepsy, obviously I was not going to be able to get my license. I would be restricted from driving for obvious reasons, right? But happily got my license. Killed it in biology that year too. Not the same teacher, another amazing teacher, Miss Kester. Got an 88 overall on that fucking exam. But again, I almost flunked that fucking just year because I was so just lazy with homeworks and that, and I would just rather fucking lift weights. And this is when I started to really, really, really get into weightlifting and training and all that. But then fast forward to sophomore year, or fast forward to junior year, I start buying books like crazy because I just keep Mr. Shrimp in the back of my head, and the way he talked and the way he just carried himself and the way he allowed me to almost learn the way I wanted to learn. He didn't put all this pressure on me. I just kept referring back to how I felt in that class, and wow, can I actually be smarter than I thought I was? So I started buying books like crazy. Self-help books, science books, history books, finance books, all these types of books, right? I was listening to podcasts because junior year I worked my second job ever, and shout out Billy, he showed me podcasts. So I was just obsessed with self-education. And junior year I was in chemistry and other science that I absolutely loved, and I did fairly well at that. But then COVID hit, and admittedly, if COVID didn't hit, I probably would have failed junior year because my grades, I was self-destructive as fuck. As much as I had this excitement that I was getting smarter and educating myself, I was obsessed with self-education outside the classroom, and I could give a fuck less about school because I thought school is not for me. It has never been for me. I need to do it, a different way. And that caused a lot of self-confidence issues in the classroom, and again, the feeling of inadequacy. So I spent my time doing other things. Like I was in extracurriculars like leadership class and football and wrestling and track and weightlifting and all that, and I just didn't focus on the books at all. I didn't do a single piece of homework. But then COVID rolls around, I start reading like crazy. I start self-educating. My confidence is getting better. And now senior year rolls around, and it's time to make decisions about what's going on with the life. And I'm fully into the swing of fitness. I'm obsessed with this shit. And sophomore year when I got my license, I was going sophomore, junior, 2 times a day, 7 days a week. And that's not even exaggeration. I was going before school, after school. Like, dude, just going bananas with it. But so senior year rolls around, and the saga started to creep back into my brain, and I started to think about it a lot more, and just I started to think like the effects that it had on my family, and I started to get a very weird sense of mortality, and I got very anxious about death, and I got anxious about what if I have another seizure, and what if I just epilepsy comes back? What if a seizure happens again? And I just constantly dwelled on that and dwelled on that and dwelled on that. And it consumed me for a really long time. I just thought about in my head, what would it be? I just thought about in my head that at any moment it can come back and I could have a seizure and my life gets turned upside down and my license gets taken and just the things that I'm doing that I enjoy, weightlifting, I can't go alone and I'm going to have people that come with me and the biggest thing that bothered me the most, it wasn't a fear of death, but it was the fear of it was the fear of a loved one finding me due to a seizure, right? And whether that be in my bed or that be in the kitchen or I'm at the gym and my mom gets a call that I'm gone, that ate at me a lot because I thought, what kind of man has their sister or their mom find them dead? I've never told anybody this in my entire life, and that's kind of crazy, but I just kept picturing in my head my mom waking up in the morning and going to get me up for school, and I'm just in my fucking bed dead. Or the thought of me driving and having a seizure and endangering somebody else, whether they be in my car or in another car. Yeah, those things bothered me a lot. And it's weird to finally say them out loud. But it was also around that time that I started to harness what I went through and use it for something good. And I just got obsessed with fitness and just becoming the best version of myself. And I started to seek harder things and just be the absolute best I could be. And I think, admittedly, I think me trying so hard in life and trying to succeed so bad and become as smart as I could possibly be and become as fit as I could be and I mean I'm no rich man by any means. And constantly striving to be financially as successful as I could be. I think all of that I did selfishly. And I especially at that time period, I did it selfishly because I just wanted to let the world know if I was driving and or doing something and had a seizure and that cost the life of somebody else, that people wouldn't look at me like I'm a bad guy. That they would look at me more that, okay, he was a good guy who just, couldn't help what happened. He can't help that he had a seizure. And God forbid I was in a car and I had a seizure and that cost somebody else their life, including mine. I didn't want that family to look at me like I'm a piece of shit. I wanted that family to look at me like this is a kid that can't help himself and we'll give him grace. Because at the end of the day, I can't help myself. I fucking didn't ask to have epilepsy, right? Now flash forward to present day, 2025. I'm 22 years old. I don't have those thoughts anymore. I don't. I always a little bit in the back of my brain think, what if I have a seizure? But I don't struggle with so much of that really dark stuff of what if my mom finds me, or what if I'm in a car and I have a seizure behind the wheel and cause an accident. I don't think about those so much anymore. But I use it now as fuel, because there's a story I want to tell with it. Is I'm motivated now more than ever to take full advantage of the life that I was not guaranteed. Um, it, I realized later on in life, when I was 18, 19 years old, that that I'm very, very, very lucky to be here, and I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to be epilepsy free, because there are people that live with epilepsy their whole life, or they lose the fight to epilepsy and they unfortunately pass away, right? It claims their life. So now I just know that. So now I'm just grateful, and I made it a point to, I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm gonna go through life with a chip on my shoulder that I have something to prove, and I'm going to take the amazing blessing that I was given of life beyond epilepsy, and being able to have a life epilepsy free. So that's why I am kind of a maniac. I am hyper focused on trying to achieve the best life I possibly can for me and my loved ones, right? And that is a battle that I fight every day. I'm pushing myself day in and day out to do that. Now this is going to conclude my story with epilepsy. Now, I didn't obviously cover absolutely everything, but I got majority of it, I think, here. And I kind of wanted to do this organically. I didn't want to have a script written. I just did 5 little bullet points of things I wanted to cover and go organically and do it off the fucking rip. I didn't want to spend weeks and weeks and weeks of thinking about it. I wanted to execute. That's what I'm trying to do in 2025, is execute. But the purpose behind posting this is I hope this just gets my story across and people can relate to this story. And I hope this allows people that might have predisposed beliefs about me to understand where I'm coming from and why I am the way that I am. And I hope this inspires people that either, fortunately beat epilepsy and then they were, told they're epilepsy free, or even people that are struggling with epilepsy till this day, that life is what you make of it, and we all have choices, right? And the cliche is choose your hard. And I just had to come to grips with I could just dwell in thinking that I'm an idiot, thinking that I'm dumb, thinking that I'm gonna fucking, I'm going to die in my fucking sleep and my mom's gonna find me, and that I could dwell on that. That's hard as fuck to dwell on that. Or I could ignore that and work beyond that and just work my absolute balls off in every other aspect of life. So, as cliche as it is, choose your heart. And I hope that this inspires at least one person to take advantage and take control of their life. And this is just, selfishly for me, this was just kind of like a therapeutic thing. I've never really worked through those thoughts before and said them out loud. And I never thought the whole really dark thoughts that I had that I told you people, I never thought I would say those out loud. And now I'm saying it for the World Wide Web. So yeah, that is my story. I hope it inspires somebody, and I hope it helps at least one person out there. And I hope you guys take something from it. I will talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.